actually. Right?
Sikia. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Joy Doreen Bira, and I'm a journalist in Kenya. I do a lot of environmental stories and investigative stories, business and technology, and I'm your moderator this morning. Welcome to the 2017 Environmental and Emergencies Forum. I know we are from lots of countries around the world, but at least there's a common factor that we have, that we all speak English and understand it. And we're here for a common goal, which is environment and humanity. So I'm thinking we're going to have mutual conversations the entire day. So welcome to all of you. So I'd just like to start by giving a few house rules. Phones in silent mode, kindly. And in case you want to access the wireless internet or Wi-Fi, you can search your Wi-Fi. There's a username, Delegates. It's open Wi-Fi, so you can get in there and share your conversations online. And the hashtag we're using today and throughout the forum is hashtag 2017 EEF. Now, for those of us who would like to use the washrooms, you're going to have to walk straight out, take your right, walk all the way to the end, and then take your left. And the first stand on your left, you will be seeing the washrooms right there. And also, those of us who do not have the folders with us, you are requested to get in touch with Hannah. She's walking around. I'm sure you're going to be able to see her. If you turn around, she's at the back. There, yeah. So in case you do not have the folders with the program, kindly get in touch with her. Something else that we also need to know is that in case you need refreshments at all, in between, there's going to be time specified for that, so you can be able to wait up for that. Maybe an hour or two, we'll be having a fast coffee break. I know it's a bit chilly for some of us. I met someone who said they're coming from South Sudan, and this almost feels like winter. Does it? Yeah, because the temperatures in South Sudan are quite on the higher side. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2017 Environmental and Emergencies Forum. I am thrilled to be interacting with you, and I hope that the environment doesn't just mean the air that we breathe, but it goes way beyond that. And I guess that's why we're here, because there's so many countries that have been affected by pollution, and there's so many other countries that have tried to do their bit for the environment in various ways. Recently, I think on the African continent, we have been affected in so many ways. The floods in Angola, and of late, we have also seen the hurricanes in the West. So what does this all mean to us as humanity? What more can we do that can change the way we view our environment? I was telling my friends just not far from today, if you breathe in and breathe out for 30 seconds, and just imagine that for 1 minute, you wouldn't have that air you're breathing, or it wouldn't be as fresh as you breathe it in and take it out. What if we had to buy the air that we breathe, just like we buy airtime? You know, how much more would we care about the environment? So when you put that all into perspective, you know, you're able to even have the more passion to care about the environment. So there's a video that we are going to be showing us before we can start to hear from our speakers this morning. So welcome once again, and looking forward to interactions. Thank you. right, that sort of introduces what we are going to be talking about this morning. And I would like to also let you know that we've got very important guests who are going to be speaking to us for our opening session before we can get into the high-level panel. So this, we are thinking, is just going to take a short while, but the most important conversation is what we're going to have after the opening sessions. And so I would like to welcome our first speaker, who is the Executive Director for the United Nations Environment, that is Eric Solheim. Welcome, and would like to hear your remarks. Thank you. A round of applause for him.
Good morning to everyone. This is really a topic of my greatest interest because though I'm at the moment the head of UN Environment, I probably spend more time of my life in trying to bring peace, quite often unsuccessfully, however. But still, I spent 10 years on Sri Lanka, and I've been also working on South Sudan, on Nepal, and a number of other places, Myanmar, to see how the international community could assist bringing peace to these places. So bringing together the issues of one side, environment disaster, environment issues, and on the other side, the wars and conflict and natural disasters is so close to my heart as it can be. So thank you all of you for coming, and it's a great partnership between OCHA and UN Environment. Let me start taking you to a place called Kukri. I was very fascinated by that place, maybe because of the name, Kukri, but also because what I saw there. Kukri is in the delta of Bangladesh. It's the most vulnerable of human existence anywhere in the world, just where the Brahmaputra and the great rivers comes into the delta and enter into the Indian Oceans. People there are preparing for the worst. They're preparing for hurricanes, for any number of storms, because they know that they will come. They happened in the past, and more storms will come. And they're preparing in many different ways. They're building their houses on pillars. They're building at least communal halls and schools on pillars so that people can take refuge there if there is a hurricane. They are preparing also for the livestock, because they know that poor people cannot leave their livestock aside if there is a hurricane. They need to bring the livestock also, otherwise they cannot survive after the hurricane. They have any number of ways of communicating, cellular phones, because nearly all poor people, even in Bangladesh, they have a cellular phone. They have alarm system, bell system to warn people. So there is an enormous amount of preparation for the worst in this very vulnerable society of Kukri. The interesting aspect here is that on one hand, it's much more likely that we will have very vibrant storms than what we have seen over the last few weeks in the world. On the other hand, people, even in poor and vulnerable society, are also much better prepared. So on one side, society and state is moving ahead. On the other hand, our challenges are bigger. But of course, the good news is the following. In the 1970s, there was a cyclone in Bangladesh killing 500,000 people. One of the biggest, if not the biggest, natural catastrophe in any time anywhere in the world. If there was a similar storm in Bangladesh today, it will still be very dangerous and still kill a number of people, but for sure not in the hundreds of thousands, probably maybe not even in the tens of thousands, simply because of the enormous preparations of the society of Bangladesh to prepare for the worst. So when I hear people basically saying that everything is going in the wrong direction in the world, no. We are much better prepared for natural catastrophes, and no, there are not more wars in the world. To the contrary, there are less wars in the world than there were at any point in human history before us. So in that sense, we are doing good, but the challenges of wars and the challenges of natural catastrophes are huge, and we must prepare for more vibrant and worse weather to survive. A lot of people speak about the relationship in environment destruction and wars in a very simplistic way. I don't think we should do that. People use the term root causes of war. And normally with that they mean poverty or environment destruction or some other forces like that. I disagree with that. There is no root causes of war like that. There's only one root cause of war. The root cause of war is when presidents or generals or guerrilla leaders or terrorists, when humans decide to start a war for their purpose, then a war happens. Wars are the most well-organized of all human activities. I mean, it may seem very, very rude statement, but it's not easy to kill a huge number of people. To the contrary, it's very difficult. So when you want to kill in the hundreds of thousands, you need a huge organization which can only be established by governments or guerrilla leaders or terrorists like the horrendous Daesh movement or ISIS movement in Iraq, which we just saw on the screen here. So the root cause of war is human action. If the root cause of war simply was, say, poverty, well, then India would have been the most war-affected area on the planet. There's hardly been any wars in India since independence. There have been few incidents, true, but hardly any major wars in India. Why is that? Well, India has had a strong state which could avoid wars. India has an inclusive ideology, bringing Muslims and Hindus and Christians and Jains and Sikhs and everyone else together in peaceful cohabitation. So the combination of a strong state with an inclusive ideology, and by the way, overlapping identity, so you can be a Tamil, an Indian, a Hindu, all at the same time. All these forces have come together so that India has avoided lots of wars, even if it is very, very poor. So there's no one-to-one relationship, poverty or environment degradation causing war. However, obviously, wars are much more likely to happen, and they're amplified by the forces of environment degradation and poverty. It's much easier to recruit soldiers into a guerrilla army if you are a very poor nation. If anyone came to my 2 children here in Nairobi and told them, I have a fantastic offer for you, I'll give you 2 hot meals a day and a Kalashnikov, of course they would just kick them out and think this is ridiculous. But that's a quite good offer if you are living somewhere with no future, no ability to marry, no ability to get a job, no way of feeding a family. Then maybe 2 hot meals and a Kalashnikov is a good offer for you. So yes, indeed, poverty is making chances of war higher and amplifying war, but are not causing wars in the simplistic language we very often use. Exactly the same with environment degradation. If we destroy the environment, people are on the move, maybe more easily recruited into a guerrilla movement or a terrorist movement of some sort. There's a very, very fierce competition about environment resources or, say, natural resources. Again, a war is much more likely. If it's a more affluent society, it's easier to share than when we have very, very little to share. So all the forces of poverty and environment degradation makes war more likely, but let's not speak about it in the too simplistic term as if it's just causing war. Just move to our neighboring state here of Somalia, if you want to see how these forces are coming together. 1 million Somalis are very recently uprooted, moving into the cities, living in tent camps in the big cities of Somalia. Why is that? Well, it's because of drought caused by climate change. It's because of war. It's because of the terrorism made by Al-Shabaab. All these reasons coming together to force people into the cities. Probably, if you want to make a distinction, drought and climate change is number 1 reason, but of course in the life of the individual, all these come together into a pull into the cities where people are living, of course, in a very difficult life, and also uprooted from the communities where they had the strong family roots, etc. So, on this basis, how to move? I see 3 areas where UN Environment can engage, and for sure with OCHA and other partners. And let me be very, very clear, UN Environment will never be the main entity in any conflict in the world. We can never be the #1 peacemaker, nor will we be the #1 entity trying to prevent wars or conflict. But with governments, with our partners in the UN system, OCHA, those put, in the case of Somalia, Mr. Keating, who is the Special Representative of the Secretary General, with them, we can help and be of some relevance. And the 3 areas. #1 is, of course, prevention. Whatever we can do to prepare for and prevent natural catastrophes, whatever we can do to prepare for or prevent wars, the better it is. This is not an easy exercise. If anyone 7 or 8 years back had predicted that Syria would be the biggest war in our lifetime, no one would have agreed to that view. Syria would not even have been on the list of the 50 most vulnerable countries if you go back to, say, 2008, 2009. I'm not aware of any politician, UN leader, or scientist who predicted a war in Syria as the most vibrant and most violent war in our last 5 years. So predicting and thus preventing is not easy. However, of course, we know that there are areas of the world which are incredibly vulnerable from a human and environment point of view, like the Sahel. The population increase is enormous. The people are living at very, very subsistence standard, where we see desertification, we see uprooting of people, and we see ideologies coming in, causing terrorism or agitating some young people into violent attacks. So if we want to prevent, at least let's look into those areas. We cannot prevent a conflict in any specific nation in the Sahel going tomorrow, but it's a safe bet that this is one of the areas of the world where conflicts are more likely to happen than, say, in the United States of America or in China. So some preventive efforts with all the UN bodies in Sahel would be meaningful. We are working in Somalia. Somalia is in a conflict, but still you can prevent for more conflict happening. We are working with Michael Keating, as I said, looking into can we provide a much better energy system for Somalia. That would make the government stronger. That would provide electricity to people, which will make it more easy to walk in the streets. And also the charcoal economy is the main economic underpinning of terrorism in Somalia. So if we can destroy or reduce the charcoal economy and move into the enormous promise of solar and wind and other renewable energies in Somalia, it may make it easier to get out of the conflict and prevent new violence in Somalia. Just making these examples of Sahel and Somalia, there could be others, but the more we can do in preventing, the better. On natural catastrophes, of course, we know that we need to fight much harder against climate change. Climate change is a huge amplifier of storms, hurricanes, sea level rise, many other phenomena which are dangerous for people. And if people are uprooted, they will be on the move. I started with Kukri, Bangladesh. If Bangladesh were to see only half a meter of sea level rise, it would mean millions of people who cannot sustain the present home. If it was 1 meter of sea level rise, it would be in the tens of millions of people in the deltas of Bangladesh who could not sustain the present life, and they have nowhere to go. They will not be welcome to India or any neighboring state, for sure. I mean, you can just see the Rohingya crisis to see how easy it for nations to welcome what they consider another group into their nation. So, number 1, prevention. Let's work hard on that. Second is environment diplomacy. Environment is a core issue in many crises. It's also sometimes an area which is a little bit less political than some of the areas, so it may also offer an opportunity for people to work together. We are at the moment trying to work very closely with both the Palestinians and the Israelis to see is there any way we can make an assessment of the environment in Palestine and do that in such a way that it can be more easy to resolve the environment problems in Palestine, whatever is the background and reason for those problems. So environment diplomacy can be a part, not the only, but a part of the solution to many crises. And thirdly, next to prevention and diplomacy is of course the aftermath of wars. Government of Iraq has asked UN Environment, can you assist us in solving the many environment issues which has been caused by Daesh? I mean, you saw some of them here. Daesh has put fire to oil fields with enormous destruction to the agricultural land and to the people living around there. This is not just happening, these are deliberate acts of war. They used destroying oil fields as a way of protecting their forces and fighting the government of Iraq and other forces. They have released chemicals into the nature. The city of Mosul, the second biggest city of Iraq, is not completely destroyed, for sure not, but the old city and huge part of western Mosul is enormously destroyed, and of course there will be a fantastic amount of debris. Some of these cannot be rebuilt. I mean, they may rebuild the mosques and the most important cultural buildings there, but most of the normal houses of West or Mosul cannot be rebuilt. So you need to get out the debris, and it may be contaminated. So environment issues are coming up, not as the only, but as a central part of the rebuilding of Iraq after the crisis. And we will try to work with the government of Iraq for this to happen. But of course we will then also need other partners, because we will need resources from Europe or Japan or North America or others to be able to really make a difference in Iraq, and we'll do that for sure with other UN entities. Another example of exactly the same is Colombia, where President Santos asked us, can you come in and look into the mining issues in Colombia after the peace process with FARC has now been brought to a positive solution. He said, we have huge number of mines, they are illegal, they were not started by FARC, nor were they started by the government, they were started by individuals because there was lawlessness and you could do whatever you wanted to do. Mercury is coming into the nature and into people. This week we are celebrating the Minamata Protocol on mercury, but we may need to make it real in the life of people, stopping mercury in the countryside of Colombia. Again, we will need support from Canada or US or Europe or someone else to really make this happen, but there's a strong desire on the part of President Santos, and we'll move ahead on this. So to summarize, let's embrace this very, very important discussion, the relationship between environment and natural catastrophes, relationship between environment and war. Let's not make it simplistic, but look into all the difficulties with this discussion, and then look into these three layers: how to prevent, how to do diplomacy, and how to work with governments in the aftermath of war. And finally, I tend to believe that when a country is in a crisis, it will always have its special characteristica. So there's no way we can work with Colombia or Iraq or Somalia without trying to understand that nation. The very famous Russian author Chekhov, in the opening of Anna Karenina, has a very famous remark. The opening says, every happy marriage is more or less the same, while every unhappy marriage is unhappy in its own specific way. And I think by and large that also applies to nations. The happy nations in the world, the United States of America or the Germanys or the Chinas of the world, those rapidly moving ahead with development, are with differences more or less happy in the same ways. While when nations are unhappy and in crisis, we also always need to understand the specific culture, politics, and issues of that nation to understand what has come into this problem, but for sure, much more importantly, how we can get out of the problem and how the international community can support that process. Thank you for coming to Nairobi.
All right, I think we can do better with our hands. Another round of applause. Is it that cold? Is it that cold inside here? All right, quite a bit that we have learned from Eric, and I should say, when it comes to issues to do with environmental diplomacy, it's never an easy road to take. But I guess the boldness that we all bring together inside here is what can foster these conversations. Now, ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker has got a long career with the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, and he has actually handled and been in the field of sudden onset emergencies. We're talking about the Bam earthquake. I'm sure some of us, or if not most of us, remember this earthquake. The Iran as well issues that have been ongoing for quite some time, and the Indian Ocean tsunami as well. We're talking about the Haiti attack, earthquake, I beg your pardon, and of course the Kashmir earthquake, and so many other emergencies that he has handled. And he has worked in countries like Syria, Somalia, among other nations, and he's a trained disaster management officer from the Danish Emergency Management Agency, and he holds a master's degree in disaster management. You don't get those that easy, do we? So ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Jesper Lund, who is our next speaker.
So then you're immediately reminded that you're getting old. So thank you, Joyce, for this. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this third Emergency Environmental Forum, or Environmental Emergency Forum, depending on where you put the pressure. First of all, I would like to thank you, Eric, and his team here with UN Environment for hosting us here at the UN compound and providing us this opportunity to get together from across more than 60 countries and a number of organizations and agencies and foundations to discuss this very, very important topic of environmental issues related to emergencies. OCHA is a proud co-organizer of this event. In many ways, the Emergency Environmental Forum cements the relationship and the partnerships we've had with UN Environment for more than 23 years. We have a small joint unit that are handling these topics. And as you already have noticed a difference between Eric and me, I put environment and Eric put environment and emergency. I say emergency and environment, but it's equally important. We could unfortunately not have chosen a better timing of this event. And I have to say, unfortunately, as Eric was already saying, the world sees an unprecedented impact of crisis and disasters. We have today more than 60 million people who have decided or have been forced to leave their homes. 60 million, and more people are coming every day. We have more than 130 million people that are in direct need of humanitarian assistance. We saw in the movies here before we started the boring opening speeches the impact of natural disasters. On the side of coming here, I'm dealing with the Rohingya crisis in Bangladesh. I'm also dealing with the hurricanes that have swept through the Caribbean, and I also have a team in Mexico handling the earthquake response in support of the Mexican government. It is not stopping. And on top of this, we have to consider climate change, an impact that will once again affect the most vulnerable groups that cannot afford any mitigations and preparedness, that are struggling just to get bread on the table every day. So unfortunately, these issues are not going to go away by themselves, but we have to handle them. And trust me, if one single organization, one single nation, one single event would have addressed these problems and overcome them, they would have done so. But that has not happened. We have, agencies, countries, World Humanitarian Summits, etc., that has been discussing these topics. But we have not made significant progress. So As an organization, OCHA recognizes it's not only about humanitarian assistance. We need to have a holistic approach with short-term recovery and stabilization and building long-term resilience. Without good governance, without capacities, without investments, people affected by crisis and natural disasters would tend to fall back in poverty and struggle in their daily life. As Joyce was saying in her opening remark, this forum is not for long, boring statements up here. We have brought you together because we want to benefit from the brain capability and capacity in this room. And we will have an event with a lot of cross-organizational, cross-country discussions, a lot of small workshops, a lot of different pedagogical tools will be used to bring you together and bring the most out of you to try to come with creative, sustainable, innovative, new ideas through which we can bring us forward as a common community and address these solutions and bring them forward. But it doesn't stop here. We also need to have good communication. So what is the message that we are sending that will enable us to address these problems? And we also need sustainable financing, because that's where we are struggling. You know, people will, and organizations, countries will invest for a short while, but the way the donor community is working is that now we fix this problem. I was myself leading the Syria operations in the first year, and we could easily raise $500 million to overcome the humanitarian challenges 4 or 5 years ago. Today, we are struggling. We have less than 40% funding for the appeals for the Syria crisis. And if we look across the boards, that's a common issue. So with this short but sharp statement, I want to welcome all of you to a creative, productive, and energetic workshop, and I'm looking forward to learn and share and discuss with you for the coming 3 days. Thank you very much for coming.
That was brief and to the point. Well, would now like to bring on our next speaker, and our next speaker has got 10 years work experience with environmental management and environmental health in Swedish municipalities, and he also went into the private sector and worked there for over 15 years as a consultant with various development cooperation projects. And well, his experience mainly has focused on environmental management systems in industry. I think this is the kind of experience that we need, especially in African countries. And well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome with me the chair of the Strategic Advisory Group on Environmental Emergencies, and also the chair of Environment and Emergencies Forum, Leif Johnson. A round of applause for him.
Thank you, Joy. Maybe I should also add that I've been working with environment in emergencies and emergencies for the past 10 years as well. Okay, so as the chair of this meeting, I really would like to welcome you, give you a warm welcome coming here to this forum. And as I said, you know, in the welcome message that I sent to all of you a few months back, I think we have many exciting kind of discussions, sessions, Ignite presentations, etc. during these three days ahead of us. I will not talk so much about the needs of merging or marrying environmental concerns with humanitarian tasks and needs, but I think if we just reflecting a little bit on the two previous speakers, I think that this Environment and Emergencies Forum is very much needed today. And when I look out here at this hall, at this venue, I can see some familiar faces and some that I'm very eager to get to learn during these 3 days. But I've also looked through the list of participation, And I can say that we have a very qualified group of professionals who are here, both humanitarians and those who are focusing primarily on the environment and how we can, marry these two kind of perspectives during these 3 days. So my expectation for this forum is that you all came here with a purpose. You came here, to share and learn. And if I will look back to this Environmental and Emergencies Forum, after it has, finished, maybe in a few weeks' time, my expectation is that those of you who came to share something had the possibility to share it. Those of you who wanted to learn something had that possibility to learn what you wanted to learn. Those of you who went here to do more networking have had the opportunities to do your networking. And those of you who are committed, to make a change, were able to maybe agree on something, maybe come up with some ideas on new guidelines, new innovative ways, of marrying this kind of humanitarian tasks with care for the environment. And that we all can conclude that this meeting was successful and it has contributed, to make a substantial change for the future. So with those few words, I would like to once again welcome you all being in this meeting. And it is now my pleasure to declare that this environment or emergencies and environment, emergencies and environment or environment and emergencies forum officially open. Thank you.
Just to stress the point, for those of us, like I mentioned, I'm sure some of us are on social media. I think, let me not underestimate that. Some of us are on social media, so if you have any questions that you would like to pose to the coming speakers, you can use the hashtag 2017EEF, and we'll be able to source all of those questions. And also, you can tweet on what your expectations are as well using that same hashtag, and we'll be able to source for those tweets of yours and feedback, so we can be able to share more incoming conversations. Now, of course, our keynote address is meant to be delivered by Yassim Al-Mohammadi, who is the Deputy Minister of Environment and Health in Iraq, but he wasn't able to make it. And so in his place, we've got Iraq's ambassador to Kenya, and that is Dr. Zaid Nouri, and would like him to come and speak to us as well and share the message that the Deputy Minister was meant to give to us. A round of applause for him, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Executive Director Rick Solheim, UN Environment, distinguished guests, good morning to you all. I'm sorry, Dr. Al-Falahi couldn't make it, so I'll do the presentation on his behalf. It's the presentation about the situation in Iraq and the disaster we faced after during the liberation of the city of Mosul and the provinces from Daesh group. Iraq is one of the most countries in the world facing real environment challenges. As a result of terrorism, wars, and negative effects of climate changes. Terrorism caused the destruction of Iraqi environment in some Iraqi provinces, such as what happened in destruction of environment in areas of Mishraq and Gayara in the province of Nineveh, Mosul. One of the most important legacy of previous wars in Iraq is mines and the unexploded bombs that pose a real threat to the environment in large areas of Iraq. Finally, Iraq is one of the most vulnerable countries in climate changes in the world, which is a constant challenge to Iraq, especially in climate refugees because of the desertification, drought, food security, extinction organisms, and spread of diseases. I'll start the presentation of the Iraqi environmental minister. Environment and terrorism challenges in Iraq. As we said, one of the most important legacy of previous wars in Iraq was mines and explosive bombs. And as we mentioned again, Iraq is one of the most vulnerable countries in climate change in the world, which is a constant challenge of Iraq, especially in climate refugees because of the desertification, drought, food security, extinction organisms, and spread of diseases. As you can see from the slides, we have the Mishraq plant, which is 45 kilometers southern to Mosul and 3 kilometers away from the Tigris River. It's an area of more than 17 kilometers. Plant production included sulfur extract, passed through mining operations to produce sulfuric acid and aluminum sulfates. In 2003, fire broke out in the Mishraq sulfur plant by burning 50,000 tons of refined sulfur, resulting large amount of gases like white clouds spread in about 20 kilometers from the site, and it was already evaluated by the UNEP. In 2016, the site was exposed to terrorist operations that led to an outbreak of fire in the nearby sulfur mountains. A toxic cloud covered an area of more than 200 kilometers and lasted for about 30 days, leading to a form of sulfur dioxide and caused suffocation to 1,000 people were recorded within the 25 kilometers of the site. Of course, there was no medical treatment at that time because of the military operations in the area. The other site we have is Al Ghayara oil field. Al Ghayara site is located about 20 kilometers from the site of Mishraq in Nineveh, down south, and has been subjected to terrorist operations, led to burning of these wells. 18 wells out of 25 wells were burning since June 2016. The burning led to air pollution by suspended particles of hydrocarbons, which contained until 28th of March 2017, the date of extinguishing the last well. Quantities of oil loss reached approximately 2 million barrels. The problematic site is well number 46, as an informal settlement mushroomed around the oil around it. Oil from the well flooded onto the streets, and neighboring places remains contaminated over wide areas with oil sumps. Many of the houses were covered with soot, and very fine particulate matter represents an indoor air quality and health risk to residents. The land area impacted around each well is variable depending on the topography. Tons of thousands of barrels of oil flowed on land to the valleys, creating at least 23 large oil sumps. In certain areas, the oil spill reached within 20 to 3 meters from the Tigris River. As you can see, the map of the Mishraq and the Ghayara oil fields. And the next slide shows the area affected by the disaster. The next slide, please, shows the fires from the well number 46. And as you can see, the other slide shows the black smoke cloud that covered the area. Now, environmental impact assessment. The emission of large amount of pollutants to the environment caused a huge damage and harm on human health and environment beside livestock in the area. After liberation from Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, ISIL, the Ministry of Environment planned a strategy that will be implemented soon to assessment the environment, and based on the assessment, on this assessment, will determine damages and the best way to restore the ecosystem in the area. We need to determine the sources of an amount of pollutions inside on the previous and current time. With all changes and development in these sources of pollutions, we need to determine also the assessment an assessment of transport means of pollutants in previous, present, and future periods. We need to also assess types, amounts of, and concentration of pollutants and their spreading area. An assessment of pollution extension level to the surrounding areas, and future prediction behavior of pollutants and their transmission mechanisms. And also to assess harmful impact of these pollutants on the environment, human health, and biodiversity in the region and neighboring areas. We'd like to seek control of pollution and reduce their spread and minimize their effects. I'm proposing and developing appropriate treatment plans for these sites based on the results of the aforementioned points, and supervise the treatment process of contaminated sites according to environment plans set by the Ministry of Environment. Of course, in this, we need the assistance and support of all countries concerned, and a lot of donations, of course, needed, and expertise of experts in this field, especially the ones supported by UN Environment. We have about 27 wells being subjected to terrorist acts and explosions, and the burning of the wells lasted between 90 days to 16 days, almost more than 220 days. Amount of oil loss is about 2 million barrels. Final inventory and damage assessment of 50% of heavy units, 60% in the fuel tanks, 50% in the buildings, and steam boilers 80%, air compressors and stores 100% total damage, industrial water 50%, laboratories is about 100% all damaged, equipment, cars, and furniture is again 100%. This is a slide showing the smoke from the Gayara oil field when it burned, and this is the shape of the cloud formed afterwards. You can see, the next slide please, you can see the photo of the oil fields already under burning before distinguishing, and another slide as well showing the same thing. This is the type of the final look of the lava left after that. Now, environmental challenges from debris and force. If you have a look to the photo, you can see down a soldier who's standing there. You can imagine the scale of debris and the heap of debris in the city. Debris management in liberated areas. We have 3 provinces were liberated from ISIS. They are Nineveh, Salah ad-Din, and Ammar, cities that populated more than 6 million people. The major problem in these provinces are the debris and safe environmental disposal of these debris. In Mosul only, the first assessment is about 11 million tons of debris. 90% of Nineveh the western side was destroyed, and large number of mines have not been removed. Still, we have another minefield inside the city. 2 oil refineries in the city of Mosul, light fuel and asphalt, were targeted by coalition forces because they've been used by the terrorist group ISIS and been bombed. Western Mosul, which is the most devastating area, represent one of the largest and most complex reconstruction challenges that will require many years or decades to recover. Removal of debris from the roads is a top priority to allow people to return and rebuild. Debris and rubble largely dumped in valleys, aggravating the risk of future flooding. Debris will be generated by demolition works. For example, Daesh structurally damaged many multi-story buildings by detonating their foundational pillars. This is a photo that shows the amount of destruction in the western side of the city. As you can see, the dark one is the old city, which is very much destroyed, almost more than 90% of it. And we have the environmental challenges of mine explosive devices, hazardous areas in Iraq. Current situation of hazardous areas containing mine actions, areas, explosive devices, and war debris. The total area of mine action, including mines, war debris, IED, etc., is about more than 3 million, about 200 kilometers square. Minefields is about 35%. On this statistics before the liberation of all cities from Daesh, we expect more minefields to be seen in the cities of Ana and cities of Hawija, which has not been liberated yet. War debris 24%, confrontation areas 19%, improvised explosives devices 15%, which is again subjected to more raise in this percentage. Cluster munition is 70%, again it's subjected to increase after the full liberation of Iraq. Highest hazardous areas was in Basra province before ISIL, and that was mainly because of the Iraq-Iran war, and it's not been cleaned it's not been demined since then, since 1990, and working is going on until now by the support of friends and colleagues. Total number of victims, more than 23,000 people, including deceased and disabled. These are the demarcation marks about oil minefields all over Iraq. This map is old. It's not been updated. Waiting until the full liberation of Iraq, we'll see more sites to be added to the current situation. And these are the number of people affected by. The other one is number of people affected by mines and become disabled or passed away. Thank you very much indeed.
So I would like to ask the ambassador to probably answer a few questions that could be coming from the audience. And I'm seeing a number of your tweets as well, coming in from different networks. We're having Toxic Remnants Network that is saying Iraq's ambassador discusses environmental damage caused by Islamic State, in particular attacks on environmentally risky infrastructure. So we're going to take a few questions. And I'm sure there's a question from Ukraine. Possibly we can have that question first, and then we'll take 2 more questions, and then we'll have the ambassador respond promptly to those. Keep your questions short or comments really short. Thank you. questions? So when there are no questions, oh yes, I get it, I see you. So we're going to have the first question from right over there, and the second will be from this side. You can use the speakers right in front of you.
Yeah, thank you, and good morning, everyone. My name is Wim Zwijnenberg from PAX. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for your excellent presentation. On the question on the environmental pollution, I think you presented quite some impressive data, and it's really disturbing to see what's happening. PAX did a survey among the residents of Guyara, and there are a lot of concerns over their health effects among the citizens, and the question will be, will these concerns be incorporated in any environmental assessment on health, and how will these health concerns be addressed in awareness raising and risk education?
Second question, yes.
Yes, François Grunwald from Group UAD. Thank you for all the speakers. My question to our Iraqi delegate is linked to how can we use some of the elements of the international humanitarian law, which in Convention 3 and Convention 4 mention environment protection as something critical, and degradation of the environment as part of the crimes of war. So how can we proceed on that direction collectively and get something stronger than what we have in the text now on that direction? Thank you.
All right. We'll take a third question, and then we'll have him respond. Yes, go ahead, use your microphone.
Yes, my name is, I'm Francis Kerr. My question goes to Ambassador from Iraq. I wanted just to know the role of the NGOs, private sector, in that situation in Iraq.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to go through the questions and answer quickly. The people of Guyara been evicted from the polluted areas, and they've been taken to camps. We are so grateful for the coalition countries, support from the United States, United Nations, Norwegians, and all other friend countries who supported the people, the refugees from these towns and provinces. They were taken to safe haven, different camps, and they were very well looked after. And they won't be returning back until this polluted area is livable. For the number two question about these crimes, for sure, I mean, the international community is collecting themselves together and to make these crimes as war crimes. And lately, in the Security Council, considered Daesh, ISIS, as a terrorist group, and all the acts being done by them was condemned, and these crimes were taken to be war crimes and war crimes against humanity, which needs support of all countries to arrest these criminals and terrorists and just take them to justice. The other question from the colleague about the private sector, we don't have a private sector now. I mean, all sectors are working together on the cleaning, assessment issues, and the first priority goes to human beings and the refugees, private sectors, NGOs, and other agencies, international agencies, UN agencies, friends from the European Unions and other governments are working day and night on securing the refugees now, and then we'll start the reconstruction after getting the right funds. I'm pretty sure that the private sector will have a very big share in this work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So let's give a round of applause to Dr. Said Noor. And it's coffee time, but when we return, we're going to be having a high-level panel. So we only have 15 minutes, I think, or less, between 10 and 15 minutes to have coffee. Let's be back in here 11 a.m. prompt, so we can have that conversation with a high-level panel who are experienced ladies and gentlemen in the environment field. So let's quickly get that coffee and be back here.